Okay, hopefully you can all hear me okay. Live, I know sometimes there's a little bit of delay between when my audio starts getting picked up, so I'm just gonna chat for a moment here. Yeah, I wish there was actually a fireplace here. Um, there's not, and it's summer, so that would be a little insane. Um, I have a nice empty room because I just moved this last weekend, so next time we do one of these, it should be maybe a little more interesting in here. But for now, the giant pile of boxes is over there. Um, so yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see some familiar faces here. I want to, just have a bit of an informal talk. That's why I put my T-shirt on. No collar shirt today. Uh, I kind of want to keep this a bit stream of consciousness. Um, I have a little bit of a presentation about the things that are currently on my mind. I hope they're fairly well formed because I have a board meeting this coming Monday, so I had the advantage of needing to prepare a lot of. No, I don't do weird voices. Um, I had to prepare a good amount for that, and this is going to help me do a little bit of that as well. So thanks for being my guinea pigs. I won't go everything, through everything there. I want to try and talk for no more than 20 to 30 minutes. But feel free to interrupt me at any time. By interrupt, I mean like ask a question in the chat here. I'll answer those as they come in, unless I'm in too much of a flow state or something. But that's probably not going to be the case. So ask your questions. I'll answer them, and we'll just kind of do my best to have a conversation with y'all. I did get a couple of questions via the Airtable form thing. Only a couple, so I'll address those when I get into the sort of Q&A, AMA, whatever session towards the end. And we'll just kind of take it from there. Hopefully, this talk will engender a few new questions amongst the audience. Okay, so with that, let me go ahead and get started. And so let's talk. These are roughly the things that have been on my mind that I want to cover today. There are a few more things that I'm not going to cover, but these are kind of the big ones. I want to give everybody a little bit of a recap of what the Urbit Foundation's mission actually is. I don't know how many people know it. There's a lot of software foundations out there these days. I think the Urbit Foundation is similar to many of them, but also different in some key ways. I'm not going to talk about the differences with others. I'm just going to talk about us, but it bears mentioning, really what we're about and what we're up to. And I actually give this talk every all hands meeting to the team as a way of reminding myself and the Urbit Foundation, and then refining how it is that we talk about this, which is inspired by what Galen does on Todd's all hands. He kind of gives the same spiel every all hands, which is as much about making sure that people keep the mission at top of mind, as well as making sure that he keeps it on top of his mind and is good at pitching it. We're going to talk about the new developers.urbit.org, which was has been a long time in the making. We've been talking about this internally for many months, really the entire year, and it all came together over about a 3-week sprint to finally put the thing together, which was awesome. And I think it came out really well. I'm going to give everybody a little bit of a tour of that site and some of the things that are on there. Then finally, I want to talk about this, kind of the biggest thing on the agenda here, which is this idea that we've been kicking around a little bit about relaunching the Urbit project. We'll talk about that more later. Okay, so the Urbit Foundation. This is our mission. just to ensure wide-scale adoption of Urbit as a technology. And I underlined that as a technology part because what we're really concerned with is seeing that Urbit is used as a piece of technology, not necessarily there are a lot of people using the software on Urbit. I think the two go hand in hand, but where we're concerned is, are developers building with this? Are organizations choosing to build products that use Urbit as their underlying basis? People like we're trying to get away from, at the foundation at least, about thinking of Urbit as a consumer product. That's kind of like thinking about Linux as a consumer product. Everybody uses Linux, at least if they use the internet at all. So that's not everybody, but it might as well be. They don't know that they use Linux. They don't know that every web application they have probably is actually powered by Linux servers. Urbit ultimately needs to be considered in the same way. Right? It's not something that people are directly familiar with using. It's just that the things that they use, the tools that their digital lives are built on Urbit. Now, there's a distance between here, the year 2022, and the eventual year in which Urbit is ubiquitous and people are using it all the time without even knowing that it exists, or having any idea of what it really is. So we can't quite get away from having to talk about Urbit directly. Linux isn't out there pitching Linux. We need to be out there pitching Urbit because we're still at a point when there's a lot of traction needed. So that said, this is more about a mindset. We're concerned at the foundation with thinking about the technologists and the organizations that are going to adopt Urbit to build products, which is ultimately what will be marketed to people to use. Okay, so ensuring the wide-scale adoption of Urbit as technology could mean that we're responsible for basically everything, and that's not the case. The Urbit Foundation got started this year. It spun out of Tlon. For those of you that don't know, I'm pretty sure everyone on this call knows that, but for posterity, we're a small team. Tlon is about 3 times as large as we are. They still do a lot. They build Urbit. We don't build Urbit, at least the actual piece of technology called Urbit. And by they, I mostly mean a set of core developers that work at Tlon. That said, a lot of things that Tlon has historically done, which is everything regarding Urbit, has been flowing into the foundation, and we're picking up more and more of what historically has been their purview. So today, we're responsible for these 4 things. Number 1 is enlisting developers to build on Urbit, or an ideal outcome is that they actually help build Urbit because there's still a lot to do. That's a smaller subset, but we are really focused on getting developers to show up and build on this thing. Morning, Ted. We fund contributions to the network. This is a way of, giving developers a reason to want to contribute to this, and then a stake in the thing, in this network that they have helped to build. And these aren't just developers. Sometimes these are organizations or non-developers, people that, are contributing in other ways. But we want to make sure that those incentives exist, and that specifically they exist in a way that creates people that are long-term invested in making this thing successful. We support contributions that improve Urbit, organizations that improve Urbit. So, in addition to enlisting developers, we're also looking to enlist organizations. We want there to be more companies, more products. Sometimes these are startups, sometimes these are existing products that are choosing to, build parts of their product on Urbit, but we're really concerned with seeing that Urbit is adopted by groups of people that are working together to build something, which, it's often the case that a group of people working together can do more than people working alone. Not always, but there are rare examples of that not being the case. Some very striking, but by and large, organizations are what build things that last over time. And then finally, this is something that this is a muscle we're trying to build. I think we're getting better and better at it, which is just communicating effectively. This is something that Urbit has been notoriously bad at for its entire existence, just communicating what the heck is going on. We really want it to be a core competency of our organization from the get-go. That said, I am not by background anywhere close to a marketer. I don't have a background in marketing. Not many of us do at all. But we're learning. We're picking it up. Beginner mindset. Over time, the scope of things that we're doing will grow, which is fine and expected. There's plenty to do. So shifting gears a bit. Last week we launched this developers.urbit.org, which I think I can just buzz right over to this tab. Nope, hang on. I need to share a different tab. I want to give you just a little tour of the new site if you haven't looked at it, and call attention to a few things that are important. So, this developer portal is really, something that has been in the making for a long time. It's a place that really teaches you how to become an Urbit developer. Not only does it teach you how, but it actually pitches you on why you would want to do that. And we've really been liking this idea of a unified operating system, or a unified environment, one in which, you're really using one system to do everything, which if you do any development whatsoever, shit, you don't even see the tab. Okay, there it is. Thankfully, I haven't actually scrolled anywhere. Thanks, Marco. So yeah, like this should tell you why you want to become an Urbit developer in the first place, which you can go into more detail here with this overview and learn a little bit about kind of the main technical pieces of the stack. There's a, sneak preview, a little pitch here, some things we put together. If any of this is incorrect, Ted, let me know. But we're trying to sell some of the most salient points of building on Urbit in the first place. That identity is actually baked in to the stack, something that doesn't exist anywhere else. That Urbit has is an entire network of functional computers. This isn't functional programming. It is it's something more. Functional networking, which I ripped straight out of a call with Ted I had like 2 weeks ago, and I probably mangled it a little bit. We'll work on that one. Every Urbit has a built-in database. All of your application state is persistent, which is amazing. If you've ever had to deal with databases and that dichotomy between those two, it really sucks. This is a big selling point. The rest of these are also big selling points. I'm not going to belabor the point. You can read it. One really cool new thing that Tinnis Nappus threw together. By threw together, I mean he did a really good job, but he did it quickly. Is this idea of the lightning tutorial, which is about aspirationally at least, it's an example application that you can build in about 15 minutes that is non-trivial and showcases the kinds of things that you can do with Urbit, like what are Urbit apps. So the idea being you can come in without really any knowledge of the stack. We're not going to actually teach you the stack. We're just going to show you what you can do in a fairly short period of time. And so from scratch, you build a chat app called Hut. The guide is a little bit long, mostly because all of the source code with copious comments is included in line. We have a way of truncating this, and we're kind of working on the format and the layout of this, but overall, this is really not very much to do in order to get up and running with a from scratch, end-to-end encrypted, except not at the ends, chat application. So that's pretty sweet. And I know that Tinnis has another one of these in the works, which will probably be out next week, which is another 15-minute example of building a ring signature-based voting application from scratch. We'll add more of these. We'll ultimately turn this into kind of a templated system that allows other people to contribute their own quick examples of how to build something real in a short period of time. I think the other big thing that we wanted to get across here is this learn the stack idea, where there exists a core curriculum of lessons to follow that teach you to become an Urbit developer and build a canonical version of an Urbit application. A year ago, you couldn't have done this at all because there was no such thing as an Urbit application. It was not concrete enough to define. That changed at assembly in October. And we're now finally at a point where we've laid out the steps to learn in order to be able to build Urbit applications. The environment setup, the App School 2, these were all existing content that Timis Nampus wrote and had existed on the old documentation site. Hoon School, on the other hand, has been completely rewritten by Neil, kind of in the wake of having taught Hoon School Live, learned a bunch from that, worked on curriculum. This is what he colloquially referred to as Hoon School dead, hence the cool t-shirts you may have seen for Hoon School grads. There's also a bunch more guides. These existed before. Now they're collected in one nice place. You can, learn how to do a bunch of concrete things. And so the site is really, the main place that a developer would spend their time is here, which is all like useful hands-on stuff. We still have all of the reference documentation under reference, and you can get to this just like you could before. If you are really looking for something specific, you can get in here and find it, but this is less front and center, which is what we want. Okay, enough about that. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll answer them now. Otherwise, I'm going to switch back to this slideshow and keep moving. A few quick notes before moving on to a next thing. If you're a developer, you should know that App School Live starts next Tuesday. You might still be able to enroll in it. If not, then send Lagrove Knockfeb a DM and beg. You probably want to come to this. Hoon School Live was great. This is going to teach you to build apps. You're going to want to do that. You're going to want to know, because we're running a hackathon that starts, I believe, July 25th, that will probably come with a shirt if you win. And the idea is that that's a 2-month hackathon. It culminates on September 25th on the final day of assembly, where the best 4 entrants get to present on stage at assembly, and the audience will vote for a winner that's going to receive a star using Holium's ballot app. Now, speaking of Holium, the next developer call that we're doing, which is in a few weeks, is with Holium. That is live up on the website. You can go and find the meetup link, RSVP, blah, blah, blah. You should definitely come because it's going to be really awesome, which is a major understatement. But anyway, come check it out. Okay, moving on. So we had our first board meeting in February, and in conversation with the board, we came up with this idea that Urbit needs to be relaunched. It's been around for a long time, but Urbit in 2013 is totally different than Urbit in 2022. In 2013, we'll get into that in a minute, but like it was, it's night and day. And in 2022, Urbit is actually at a place where you would want to launch it because people can do things with it and it can actually support a lot of growth. So the idea that was, it's less of an idea, it was more of a, you should do this from Bology, was you should build a deck that, it's basically the pitch deck you would take around that pitches an Urbit that is ready to be actually launched for real. Build that even if it is not, if everything in it isn't achieved yet, because those then serve as the goals to get to that tell you, what you need to do in order to launch. So come up with aspirational metrics that are, presumably realistic, that you can work towards to get to a point where you know that you can actually go out and relaunch this. So this is a very rough draft of that deck. It needs a lot of work. And if you've ever, built a deck and gone out pitching, you know that it's actually not a static thing that you do and then you're done. It's like a thing that you do forever. You keep working on your deck over and over and over again. This is one of those. This is a first draft. You guys are the first to see it. So if you didn't know, Urbit launched accidentally in 2013 at a time that it was really just like a bad prototype. And it launched accidentally because it was open source and it had a public website, and someone put it on Hacker News. And you can go and find that if you search on Hacker News for Urbit and you look for, search it by date, you'll find one of the very last things is like in 2013 is this post when the Urbit Hacker News account still actually engaged. It was Curtis. This is the one where Galen found Urbit, and you can find his comment down in there, which is, so it's a fun little blast from the past. And from the 7 years between 2013 to 2020, like Urbit was going from prototype to a stable actual system that wasn't being wiped out every few weeks or months. That could actually support some kind of real product that had a future. So no one was really encouraging Urbit to be adopted at that point, which was often mistaken. In fact, a lot of people were actively discouraging people from using it at all because it really wasn't ready. So, it's not exactly a bummer, but it was the way it was. And so, for those 7 years, like there was a lot of, well, anyway, not important. The fact that it took 7 years isn't really a surprise. Like Urbit is a hugely ambitious project. It was expected to take a long time. It's always been talked about as a decades-long thing. This is why Galen and Curtis decided not to go through Y Combinator, because it wasn't the kind of environment in which Urbit would be successful. It is not a build an MVP and launch it as soon as possible, and then get people to use the thing. God damn it, these slides. Okay, luckily we're only one slide in, and it's just text. Okay, so this all talks about the period from 2013 to 2020. And in 2020, Urbit was also not ready. Now, the thing about Urbit is that it's technology. So for it to be adopted, it needs to enable its adopters to do something better and more efficiently than they otherwise could. Right? It's computing technology, it's software. And so that means these people that are adopting it are software developers. These are the ones that we need to drive to adopt the thing. And in 2020, developers still had some major, there's some major things that were lacking for developers. Like you couldn't build your own application at all. You downloaded Urbit and there was just like a web application that shipped with it. And that application was like tightly coupled to the Urbit code base itself. You couldn't really build your own thing. You couldn't distribute it to anybody else if you built it, except sending them some code over some mechanism and having them move files around. Not viable. Like users could not access applications. They like I mentioned before, you couldn't just install an application without a huge amount of pain. And if you did, you were pretty much breaking your ability to receive any updates to the system in the future. And you also needed there to be like enough performance in the underlying system to actually, build something that had a reasonable user experience, because it is 2022 and we're competing with the internet, and there are plenty of things that work pretty quickly. In 2022, though, all of these things are now satisfied. So it took about 2 years to get to a point where, people could build applications, they could access them because they could actually get on the network in the first place. And those things they were using actually performed well. And this year, again, speaking from the future, all of those needs are met. Some of you may have seen this leaked memo from Philip about the remaining things to do to make Urbit into, a real viable system. If you don't know where that is, ask somewhere on the network and it will be handed to you. If you ask in this call, I'll link it. This is a very condensed version of what was talked about in there, but he says what's unique about Urbit 2022 is that the list of things required to be a viable product stack is actually quite short. Each of them is doable to the barely viable level in months with little implementation risk. Right, so it's not far off. And what he goes into in the rest of this memo is that, like 6 years ago in 2016, it was a giant list. Like, how do you do a PKI at all? There wasn't an idea for that at the time. Those kinds of things, those giant questions about like, how are we going to solve this massive problem? There aren't any of those anymore. They're basically all handled, which is a very exciting moment, right? So as I mentioned before, October of last year, software distribution shipped. Okay, now you can actually build applications as a developer. L2 and the launch of hosting from not one but two hosting providers that are both making great strides actually made it really easy to just get on Urbit without much fuss. That is, historically been one of the biggest, one of the big hurdles to using Urbit is using Urbit. You can't get on it very easily, and we still grapple with this today, but by the end of this year, that's going to be a solved problem too. And then, what you're also going to see by assembly this year is that a bunch of the stuff that the core devs are doing are going to make, and I pulled this 10x number, straight out of thin air, but it's probably about right. The network is going to become way more performant, mostly in the read category, where, now getting information from other people is extremely fast and can even be parallelized. That's a big deal because right now every read might as well be a write, and writes are slow when you're writing to disk. So, in 2022, we have performance, we have onboarding, we have the ability for developers to build software. Now, it's not done. Like, there's still a lot to do. It's just that the things to do are no longer in the domain of, the unknown. Can we even do this? They're just checking items off of a list and putting in the time. So, I think all of the people on this call surely realize this. And it's our job to get this word out to the broader public, which is that Urbit is imminent. This is no longer a research project. Yes, it's stupidly ambitious. We've been talking about that forever, and it's actually going to make it. The thing works, which is not really well understood. Now, the thing that's especially cool, I think, and I would think this, being at the Urbit Foundation, is that it isn't just one company that's saying this. Over the course of 2 years, remember this is aspirational, although not far from the mark, the Urbit ecosystem went from 20 to 300 active developers, right? So we've over 10x'd the pool of people that are actively building on the system, much to the dismay of everyone who says that Urbit is unlearnable and, totally obfuscated. It's actually very fun to build in, and we have the numbers to prove it. Like, people are flocking to this thing and thriving. There was one app. Now there are 50. This is a guess because I have no way of knowing how many there actually are, but it is probably about this number. There was one organization building on Urbit, and it was Twan, and now there are 15. There are major Urbit native companies like Holium and Akbar and Terrell and Tlon and the Urbit Foundation and Dalton. There are others as well that are beginning to integrate with Urbit or have already in various ways. And we've 10x'd the number of Urbit nodes that are running. Hosting is taking off. People are actually using this thing. And DAOs, right? Kind of this, nascent new way to build an organization in an internet native way, or network native way, perhaps I should say. Those are really taking root on Urbit. And, we really think that this is a breakout user demographic for Urbit that has a huge amount to gain from it. Okay, so that's the pitch. That's where we hope to get to. These are the milestones. Where are we actually? We're not at 300 active developers. We're at 250. Which is pretty darn close. We can get there. We have half a year. That's very doable. I think we actually have about 50 apps. Again, I don't know, but it's pretty close. We don't have 15 organizations building products. We have 7 and we have 6 leads that are all, committed to doing so. And now it's just a matter of making sure that they're successful. That sums up to 13, which is not far from 15. Again, we have 6 more months. We can hit this by the end of the year. Active nodes, we're at about 1,500 if you look at the Network Explorer and look at the number of online nodes. Again, getting to 5,000, this is maybe the biggest stretch. Can we bring this many ships online this year? That's going to be really a function of Tlon's hosting and Third Earth's hosting, but I'm pretty confident that they're going to do it. DAOs, we're about 5. So we're halfway there, and we have a lot in the pipe that can get us the rest of the way. So about a decade after accidentally launching, we've relaunched at Assembly 2022, and we are the only real, emphasis on real, alternative to the internet stack. That's a big deal. So Assembly, right? Obviously, this is sort of the physical instantiation of this relaunch effort. The relaunch itself is, it isn't one moment really. It's going to keep going over time throughout the rest of this year. There's a lot to follow up with after Assembly to make this, really considered a relaunch. But, moments in time are particularly important. I think those of us that were at Assembly last year know this. And Assembly this year is going to be very similar energy. So you should come. And that's all I have. So if you have some questions, go ahead and throw them in there, and I'll address them. In the meantime, let me go to the ones that were asked asynchronously in that form. Actually, I'll leave that up for a minute. So someone named Sasha asked, what would be the best onboard into Urbit that makes it easy to hook up with people on the network and actually use it in interesting ways? So assuming you mean hook up, to just like hang out with people, there is no Urbit dating app yet. It probably wouldn't be a hookup app. It'd be more like, fast track to marriage. Assuming you just mean hang out with people. What's the best onboard ramp into Urbit? Well, again, aspirational. It's going to be hosting, right? Hosting is, like the problem with running Urbit is that locally is you're, even if you don't really understand how to manage the thing, you're going to run into moments in this time that are going to require you to know how to keep your Urbit running, which a lot of people have gone really far with doing that. Many of them totally non-technical. Most people aren't going to be able to do that. You need hosting in order to make it possible for a large number of people to get on the network and onboard it. So the question, what would be the best onboard ramp into Urbit? It really depends on who you are. If you're technical, you should just run it yourself because it's super fun and worthwhile. If you're not technical, it's to use hosting. And I believe you can go to Third Earth today. Let me double check this, but I believe their site is third.earth. It's pretty darn easy to remember. And you can just sign up and get a hosted ship today. You can also reach out to Plon. I don't think you can sign up publicly for it. They also run hosting, but that's still invite only. So go to Third Earth. That's the easiest way. And at that point, join our Urbit community and start asking around. You will meet people. You will find groups. The interesting ways to use Urbit right now all revolve around talking to people. Right? If you're not looking to talk to people, or you don't want to see, a group of highly interesting and genuinely diverse people hanging out and talking all over the place about all kinds of weird stuff, if you're not into that, then you're probably not going to be, super into Urbit right now. There are other applications. You can use Holium's ballot application to vote on various things, which again, that kind of requires that you know people and are engaging with them. Otherwise, it's going to be, single player voting kind of suck. There are other things. Most of them are social. So anyway, hopefully that answers that question if, the person that asked is actually listening. Another question I had was, what's the postmortem on wet? From what I understand, wet is one of the galaxies that is run by Tlon. It went down. It wasn't noticed because I don't believe there's really any instrumentation on running infrastructure nodes. It's just when people complain, we go, oh shit, I should probably handle that. Who runs it again? And it was brought back up, I think a couple days ago, after about a 3-week outage when no one noticed. Funnily enough, when it came back online, so did 92 other ships, or at least according to the Network Explorer. So, meaning the Network Explorer was able to actually establish connection with them. So they were online, but they were unable to communicate with new nodes. So one, way of taking this postmortem on wet is, okay, someone needs to know when something goes down, and it needs to not be asynchronous. Like someone complains and then you go and check the uptime monitor and see, oh, it's not up, or someone checks it every day. Like you should be pushed when something goes down. And it isn't hard to build this kind of system. It just needs to be built. Now, right now, Tlon manages entirely too much infrastructure. Wet is technically an Urbit Foundation galaxy. We're in talks with them right now to just transfer custody of this over, and we'll have the Urbit Foundation run it directly. And we're going to put some effort into figuring out how to set up proper instrumentation, status monitoring. We do run a bit of, some infrastructure nodes right now. We run the DEG galaxy and the LapDig star, which hosts a number of groups that we run. This is something that we need to develop competency in, and back to this original point of the Urbit Foundation accepting more responsibility from Tlon over time, being able to handle more infrastructure and run more Urbit infrastructure is definitely one of those things, and we're looking to grow that right now. So that's basically it. Insufficient tooling, overloaded organization responsible for running too much infrastructure. We're going to divvy that up a little bit and get better about making sure these things don't happen. Okay. I don't see too many other questions in here. Maybe I missed some. Let me scroll back through. It looks like a complete list of apps somewhere has been largely answered. There will never be a complete list of apps. There cannot be, for the same reason that there cannot be a complete list of groups, because there is no central place that apps come from or are published to. So, it's impossible. Heuristics can be established. People can submit their applications to places that are largely central. This is the case with groups, Rondev group discovery, or Rondev, sorry. People post their groups there. People, as was mentioned before, already post their apps to the Foundry. The one thing I should mention as well is that the Urbit Foundation has put together this project called public links, which, aren't very easy to discover right now. Let me pull one up real quick and actually remember to share the screen. All right. So this is an example of a public link on urbit.org. You can see the URL here, urbit.org/applications/Lambda person who built the application /ballot. This gives you a little heads up about some of the things about the application. Lets you copy a link that you can actually paste into Landscape and use to install it. It goes out to a guide that tells you how to install Urbit applications in the first place. And it also renders a really nice Twitter card if you share this, or any other thing that is open graph aware. The idea here is that you can take these links, you can send them to your friends and say, come use this thing. We have the same thing for groups, we have the same thing for Urbit IDs, each of which provides some call to action that involves getting on the Urbit network. There's a bunch of these now. And you can submit your own too if you have one, and you probably should. I'll get to the next question in a minute here. One of our next efforts that you're going to see in this next month is the creation of a proper ecosystem page on urbit.org that highlights all of the different applications and groups and people and organizations that comprise the Urbit ecosystem, so you can actually go and discover this stuff. Again, someone has to go and submit their application or put this here. There's no way to magically put people's applications onto urbit.org. But over time, people can contribute to these, and when they are actually discoverable and become a useful way for the outside world to see what exists on Urbit, I'm guessing that people will use them. Okay, so this is good. This is a good question. Given the Bology news, will there be a focus on Urbit as a tool for building network states? I think there already is a focus on using Urbit as a tool for building network states. For all of you, and like the crew down in Austin is basically doing this in Costa Rica and El Salvador. So, pay attention to what Assembly Capital is doing. There's like a lot of people are thinking about how to acquire land and how to build spaces, and are adopting Urbit as the technical stack for, establishing a digital presence for those communities and keeping in touch. So I guess, I don't think that this is because of Bology really in any way, so much as that, the egregore that is Exit has taken root in the Urbit community. Obviously, if you're, following the comment thread here. And so, I think Urbit is just ideally suited for this, and people are flocking to it for that reason, or just naturally using it. Could there be more of a focus? Probably. Is this an area to explore with Bology? Definitely, especially now that his book is actually out. I expect this to be something that, I talk about with him pretty soon. It may even be, it wouldn't be surprising if this is the nature of his talk at Assembly. I don't know that for a fact. I haven't actually talked to him really about what he's going to talk about, but it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine that he's launched a book called The Network State and that he talks about network states at this, Urbit conference he's going to speak at. So yeah, I mean, I do think, like right now the focus has been on Urbit as a tool for DAOs. A lot of people talk about this. And DAOs are network states, really. They're proto network states, not fully fleshed out. Maybe that's the better name for them than DAO, because they're generally not actually decentralized or autonomous. But yeah, I mean, I think, network states is probably what every DAO aspires to be in its limit. Anyway, that's what I think about that. Maybe that's an answer. Feel free to, ask more. And I can expound, but yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, cool. That does answer the question. Good to hear. Okay, well, I'm going to do these every month. I mean, they're fun. I enjoy doing it. I, don't know why I didn't do it sooner. Thank you, Tim, for suggesting doing this again. But yeah, I want to make this just kind of a regular thing to do that involves sharing whatever is going on and giving people, the opportunity to just ask questions. Often it's the case that you have to make a choice between doing a thing or talking about the thing you're doing. We all kind of have this bias towards doing the thing, and we're, as I mentioned before, working on building up the competency to actually talk about what we're doing, but making sure that this is on the calendar is a really good way to, to share these kinds of things without having to think about it too hard. Okay, there's a question that came in. Let's see, let me read it real quick. Okay. So I think there's a pool of people potentially very sympathetic to the ethos of Urbit, privacy, calm, ownership, even if they may not be candidates for being on board in the near term. I would agree with that. Curious if there's any strategy for spreading that ethos generally such that Urbit becomes the solution those people gravitate to. Yeah, there is a strategy. Let's see, how do I answer this? So one of the big things that we're doing, I didn't, talk about this, but one of the big things we're doing is focusing on marketing, and specifically the publicity side of that. A big part of, a big problem Urbit has is that a lot of people just don't know it exists. We've been to a number of conferences throughout the year where, we've found ourselves in discussions with people explaining Urbit and what it does, and people are blown away by the fact that it actually exists because they had no idea. Many people that have encountered Urbit any time in the last 9 years of its existence, again, we need to relaunch this thing. People that have encountered it historically often don't, they had an impression of Urbit when it was prototype grade and it wasn't really clear what it was for. They think maybe it's a glorified chat app if they came in 2020 because all that you could do with it was chat with people and there was no software distribution. So they have the wrong impression. So part of what I mean by relaunching Urbit is actually going out and spreading the word about what this thing is and building awareness. We did Urbit New York City in May, which was predominantly about doing things that would generate buzz and get people talking about this. And it did. We had more chatter, page views, people coming to Urbit than ever before in Urbit's history. And so we're going to be continuing to do this. And we are currently working on a number of ways to get Urbit placed in, just to build more press around the project, which is, not unusual for most products. It's very unusual for Urbit, because, press and journalists have been anathema for forever for Urbit. There's always been don't invite the press. We don't want to talk to journalists because journalists always just, they don't get it. And not only do they not get it, but, they spread they're often hostile. And, you can generate, like, there's a saying, no publicity is bad publicity, which is true. But, we genuinely didn't want publicity at a time, and it was probably good to not want publicity at the time, that it really couldn't drive anything positive. People couldn't use the thing at all. So, even if you're going out, if 5 years ago we're going out for publicity talking about what Urbit means, it's not going to land well because people aren't going to, end up having any way to follow up on their curiosity. Now they can. So now is a really good time to be going out and getting Urbit talked about in the news. And there are ways to do this, and we're doing them. I'm not going to go into too much detail because, part of the benefit of, or part of the way that you succeed at this is by not showing your hand too early. But, being on podcasts, being featured in major publications, whether positively or negatively, are things that you do when it is possible for people to actually read that, wonder what the heck this thing is, and become interested, and then actually go and use it. So those are all things that are, coming to exist. So there is definitely a strategy. And it begins with awareness and telling the world that Urbit is here, it works, this is what it is, this is what it represents, and then giving them a way to actually take a next step and use the thing. So, yeah. Hopefully that answers that. Okay, we got a few more minutes. If you have anything you'd like to ask, do it now. I'll wait a few minutes. Otherwise, I'm, going to sign off here in a couple minutes and, get back to it. Okay, well, I think that's all. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Happy Friday. Feel free to send me any feedback privately or publicly. You can shoot me an email, josh@urbit.org. You can send me a DM, wolref-podlex. If you have feedback about this, feedback about anything else, questions, comments, concerns, philosophical tidbits, I'm around and, eventually responsive. It's been fun. Have a good weekend.